Hello and welcome to Classical Music Career Podcast. My guest today is Rebekah Okpoti, who you might know as the Girly Organist on Instagram. I came across Rebekah's account, and even though I know very little about the organ, her content just drew me in. It is conversational, honest, personal and relatable. She shows the truth about the highs and lows of being a musician, including videos of real-time practicing, something that I think we should all start doing. Today's conversation is all about the Instagram, the Girly Organist vlogging experience, and how she built a community through her honest and relatable content. I personally found this conversation very inspiring, as it allowed me to widen my own perception of social media. So check out Rebekah's account, The Girly Organist, on Instagram, and she recently started her Patreon account, so if you would like to support her, you can also find her there. This podcast is created by InClassics, web development agency for musicians. We create beautiful and easy to manage websites, and you can learn more about us on our website inclassics.com. And now let's jump right into this conversation. It was nice to come across your account, and I was very touched by the honesty of it, because we as musicians, we often try to portray ourselves in a certain way, especially on social media. So, we only put, like, as you maybe said somewhere, it's like if a practice video and the person's like perfectly playing everything, it's like, it creates a bit unrealistic view of who we are and what we do. And it's not only for the audience, but for us ourselves, no? Because when we see other musicians always being perfect and you come and you're not, it's like a little hard, no? So it was very nice to see your account and the honesty of it. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm Rebekah, and you may probably have came across me as the Girly Organist on social media. I work at Liverpool Hope University, and I'm a social organist at Leeds Cathedral here in England, in the north. And I use my channel to just show the highs and lows and all the craziness in between that goes with being an organist.
But do I understand correctly? Did you start this channel just a year ago on the 1st of January, like 2022?
Yes, so I only started playing the organ properly in 2020, August. So it's not that long ago, really, but disclaimer, I do have a background in classical piano, so it's not, from complete ground zero. But I started the channel, and it, often people start social media channels to try and keep themselves accountable or, as a kind of public profile. I just kind of started mine for fun, really, because I don't actually have any personal social media, because I don't think I do anything that interesting. So, the organ's the most interesting thing I do. And so I just kind of started it for fun, really, to see if everybody else's experience is sort of weird and wonderful as mine, as opposed to, it wasn't to keep myself accountable or as a professional profile or anything like that. It was a more holistic look at director of music in a parish church and what does life look like for that, because I think lots of it goes undocumented and people don't really know. So it's maybe an education for other people to have a sort of peek into a world they might never be part of, really.
At the moment, I'm also just learning about social media. So I was always playing in the orchestra. I never had to do social media, it was never part of my life. And now that I started this podcast, I also have a company that makes websites. So of course, the subject of social media is a big one. So I'm very curious about all the things that you do. So first of all, how do you make content for your social media? How do you find the time for it, and how do you do it?
Okay, so I feel like this is confessions of an organist coming out. I have 3 mobile. I have one that is personal, and then that's the one that I also do my Girly Organist thing on, and then I have 2 for work, but different parts of work. So I try and keep work, the Girly Organist, organ-related things very separate. So I think that helps manage it. Literally, I just vlog whatever it is that I'm doing. So I think sometimes, it's this idea of unscripted storytelling. And I think one of the biggest influences on me has been, I watch quite a lot of YouTube. One of my hobbies, I only have 2 hobbies. One is playing the organ and the other is fashion. And there's a lot of YouTubers who do fashion content. So I watch kind of quite a lot of long form video. So I've picked up kind of things from that, or what works, or try and think of what do I enjoy most about watching, whether that's a TV program, whether that's YouTube or Instagram. and what is it that I feel I'm not getting? So what is it that I'd really like to see and I'm not seeing? And, there's some people, this idea of subscribing or following. There's a YouTuber called Michelle Carre. She does a series called Challenge Accepted, which is all like sports. And, she went through a beauty pageant to see what it's like and went and worked for the fire service. And she does all sorts of random things. And I don't think she's done any music ones. No, she hasn't done any music ones to date. But, she went and trained to be a ballerina in 12 weeks and things like that. And, she just vlogs what she's doing. Now you can see the progression in her own work over time, where obviously now it's much more curated because she's got a bigger team, etc. But in the earlier earlier days of the channel, this idea of, if you find something interesting, then chances are someone else is going to find it interesting. And I think that, if you don't curate it too much, then people connect with it, so they want to watch it more. Because, we don't need more concert organists. I mean, I do lots of recitals. I don't know if I class myself as a concert organist, really, because I do quite a bit of liturgical playing as well. But I think, if you want to go and look at the organ on Instagram or YouTube or any of these channels and see fantastic performances, then it's there. It's going to pop up. It's going to be the first thing. If you want to actually know something about the organ or know, what's involved in becoming an organist or what people literally do in their everyday lives, what's the narrative of someone's life, then I like to think that that's where my content comes in. Because personally, I don't really watch full performances on video. I would rather listen to the recording so that I can imagine what it looks like when it's played. So I think, that kind of what your own interests, there will be other people that share that. And yeah, I mean, I really just don't overthink it. I've practicing tonight, and I've got some videos and some things. I was like, okay, that's gone well, and other things I'm like, this is terrible. So I put full registration on, and I'm like, okay, I think you should always try and get to the end of the piece, even if it's diabolical, because it's good for the soul. So I think, just kind of being, I don't want to say your authentic self, because that sounds so a bit weird and cliche, and we hear the message. It's not that, it's show what you do in real time. It's 3 minutes of real time as opposed to 3 minutes of advert.
Absolutely. And actually, I agree with you that this phrase of like being authentic self and being yourself is being so overused. But at the same time, we don't see so much of people being themselves, right? Because there is somehow this mask that you put on public, right? And it's not necessarily bad. We all play a certain role, and especially as performers, we need this persona on stage. And of course, that persona also comes to the internet. But I absolutely love what you said about finding your space in this content creation. It is absolutely true that there are all the recordings, there are so many performers. And anyways, we cannot bring a live performance experience into a digital world, especially when we speak about organ. The last time I was playing some piece with an organ, it was in the Hamburg Elbphilharmonie, and it was like the ground was shaking every time that the organ would come in. So how can you put that into the iPhone,
I think there is a place for that content, but I think, it's who you're trying to reach. Who's the end user? I want, a lot of the people that follow me, they're from all around the world, and lots of them are in parishes. They're not ordinary people. Maybe they've played piano, they're trying to learn the organ to help their church, or they just really love the instrument, and they're like, they've got a few lessons with someone at a cathedral or something, and they just love the instrument and the process. And I think, in their minds, they look at you and go, wow, you're amazing. But going, actually, we're the same, really. I'm going to sit there and absolutely have a tantrum at the organ. I had one tonight. But that normally is part of the process. So I think the more that people can see your genuine personality just in day-to-day life, interacting with other people, and, there's just a camera on, I think one of the videos I did yesterday was when we were moving the organ, and I just said to him, "We're setting up. Can I, stick the camera on?" And it was on for about an hour and a half. And then I just, that's funny, because he's going, "Oh, we're moving it to the east," and I'm going, "Yeah, let's move it."
That was good.
It's life, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, the organ's been moved." And if people were to meet me, like, you've met me now, again, I suppose it's virtually, but if you were to meet me in person, you'd get the same sort of response. So I think for me as well, it's that consistency across, they call it branding, it's brand consistency, but it's personality consistency really is and character. It should all marry up, really.
Yeah, that's very true. Actually, it's interesting, the subject of the audience. So you say that your audience is a lot of people from parishes, yeah, and also people who learn the organ. So it's a very specific audience. Did you think of these things when you were starting the channel, or it just came naturally that people who want to learn the organ started following you? And do you now, when you create a content, do you think of who are you creating it for? Do you know that I'm making this for people who practice organ rather than people who just want to listen to organ?
No, I don't think about that. I just make whatever it is that I'm doing. I do think a little bit about who is listening, and what are they listening for. So, I don't have very many followers that are, sort of saying, "Oh, that wasn't a very good performance," because I think it's quite obvious that it's not the space for that. If you want to do that, then you can comment, come up to me and comment after a performance or something. That's fine. That's the time to do that. But I think I get lots of emails from people saying, "Oh, I'm glad it's not just me that experienced that," or "I'm not just me that, I think that's weird. I'm glad it's not just me that kind of always has a cup of tea next to me when I'm practicing," and it's the smallest things, but it's just real life, it's everyday, normal life.
Absolutely, and I think this normal life is very important for mental health, for us as musicians, as students, and simple examples like my girlfriend, she's teaching violin. She started during the pandemic, so it's also for her very new, the small children. And at some point she comes home and she's like, "Look, I watched this YouTube video and there is this lady who is showing "Look, I'm teaching this child to play." And she says and she gives her 3 instructions and then the child plays perfectly everything, in tune, with music, with rhythm, And she's like, "But this is not how it works, And when you say of course that someone was teaching this child for 6 months to do that one piece, and then they make a video. And then that reality is lost, The other one is when people prepare for auditions and they go on YouTube to listen how the excerpt sounds. And you have someone who was preparing that excerpt also for God knows how long. And then you're like, "I would never play like this. I wouldn't go for audition," And then you're depressed and then you go into this. So the real content, actually, it's now that we live in this world where we do share things like this, that it's very important to have this just reality, just to know how it is, without the filters, without cuts. So tell me, so 1 year on Instagram, what did it teach you? So what is the content that people like? How to make it engaging? Where do you get the ideas except for just putting the camera, when you're moving the whole organ around the church?
What have I learned? Well, I was a bit annoyed, I'll be honest. I was a bit annoyed because this year I broke my foot.
No.
Yeah, which is the worst thing to do as an organist. To break your foot. And so I couldn't play for 4 months. So I'm I lost 4 months of progress this year. I didn't vlog anything in that time. I just sat on the sofa and ate peanut butter on toast. I didn't vlog anything at all. And so I feel I've not given people a full year, number one. Number two, if something's getting tiring to do a particular type of content, then don't do it, because it comes across. Don't do it just for the sake of it, because people will know. Better to have a few days off or whatever, and then post something that you kind of go, "Okay, yeah, I enjoyed that process at the same time," rather than just for the sake of it. I quite like marketing, and quite a few of my friends are in marketing. So I think even though I've not, Facebook and things were out when I was younger, but I'd never used it. So I only really started social media in lockdown. I've just kind of picked up a lot from the people around me, as analytics and SEOs and things like that. And choosing your platform, I like watching YouTube. So for me, the obvious choice was like, oh, well, do your YouTube channel. But then I was like, well, no, because YouTube, you're talking sort of 10, 20 minutes, an hour worth of content every time. And I don't want that sort of time. And you might only post a video once a week, but there's so much more curation has to go into it. So Facebook is a bit catty. I'll be honest, I find it can be a bit catty, and I'm not into keyboard warriors. I always think if you wouldn't say it in person, you shouldn't say it online. So I'm not the biggest fan of Facebook, but I think it's a necessary evil. And I like Instagram because it's relational. There's an interaction, there's comments, as you can ask me things, I can answer, you can disagree, but it's about the kind of relational, it's a relational media as opposed to performative, slightly more, in YouTube and things. So I think that's why I gravitated to Instagram. TikTok, I feel like the jury's out on TikTok. I'll be honest, I think it could be a fad. Time will tell. For me, I think that it's a little bit over sexualized. I think that there's some really grotesque things that pop up on there, which you're protected from slightly more on other social media outlets. And I feel like from a safeguarding, perspective, obviously I'm over 18, but there are children on there, and they might be like 13, 14-year-old girls, and they don't look like their children, and they've got the makeup on and their outfits and the filters, and I think it's actually potentially a dangerous space to be in. So, I think there's young people on other platforms, but not to the same extent as TikTok.
Speaking of platforms, you are now moving towards Patreon, yeah? And actually, I know very little about this platform. So can you tell me a little bit about Patreon and why did you go there? And what are the goals and what are the plans about that one?
So Patreon, I thought, I didn't want to start it in the first year. I wanted to see how it went. The second year this year, and some of it is calculating the cost of being an organist. I did, I think it was 21, 22 recitals in 2022 with a broken foot. And that cost me personally about £3,000. And I received in donations, I think 250 out of all of them. So when that's the reality of it, I think there's lots of reasons for that. It's not criticism as such. It's just, it is what it is. I think I am a musician, but because I work in academia as well. So I have a job full time, which means that that's an option for me, which is different to if you were a freelance, music teacher or musician, then it would, some of it wouldn't be possible. But I treat it as my hobby, and it's been completely at my own expense, which it's great. I wanted to condense, things that people have done over 5 or 6 years into one year or slightly more, and I think that I have achieved that. So that was kind of goal with my playing and recitals and things like that. So I think going forward, the Patreon is, I'd like to buy a vlogging camera. I'd like to buy some better equipment, different editions of music, perhaps, be able to invest some money in, sort of doing commissions for new music, or for young organists, or putting events on and things like that. So really the Patreon is there to facilitate that. So all it is essentially asking people to sponsor you. So essentially they might give sort of £10 or £15 or dollars or euros or whatever it is a month to help kind of be able to do more, but to make the things that I am already doing go a lot further. Because you have to think about things. If I mean, I don't do sponsored posts very often. I think I've only done 2 in the year, but that's like even a cheap one would be £50. So you have to think about these things, and I think, well, if people are enjoying it, then they can sort of help to get more entertainment. It's Comedy Central over here. So that's why. So that's Patreon. It all connects through PayPal as well, so it's quite safe. On my website, that's not got a Patreon page. I've not connected those two yet, but it does connect to the same PayPal. So really, it's just asking people, if you're enjoying what's coming out, you want me to come and do a recital. There's lots of places that ask me to come and do a recital, and they go, oh, we've not got any money. And sometimes they go, yeah, still come. Other times, no, it's too far or whatever. I think it's just so that I can say yes to more people and to be able to encourage more people. So that's why I'm going down that route. It's not to sort of be a money maker, as it were. I'm not kind of, my long-term goal isn't particularly to become a full-time content creator, because I do lots of other really interesting things, and I wouldn't want to stop doing those, because some of that is what feeds into the organ things being so interesting. But it is to help me be able to make it better quality, make the sound better quality, be able to go and play these recitals at places and it not fall on to the people that are just there to pay for everything when they maybe don't have it.
I think it's amazing, because often it's not even 100% clear. Yeah, so you do the social media, but what's the end goal? How to, when speaking about monetizing, it's a completely different story. Yet, so like in the end, we as musicians often end up making content just for the sake of it, just because everyone is doing, so I'm gonna do. So something like this Patreon that helps to bring at least a little bit of something for it, because it just takes a lot of time also to create content, and when we do that, we don't do something else. So absolutely great. 2 questions left. So one is, if you could give an advice to your younger self practicing piano, since you are now starting practicing a new instrument, what advice would that be?
It would be, if you are learning piano, it would be go to your local church and also learn to play the organ. Because at the age of 12 or 13, I mean, I'm totally biased because I love the organ, but genuinely, you don't know at that sort of 12, 13, 14-year-old age necessarily if you're going to go into music. But I would say if you are, and that does happen, to be able to make money, I think there's definitely more money to be made in the organ as an organist than there is as an organist with limited skill. There's a lot of money that can be made. You can make a full-time living out of that, and people do time and time again in a way that you can't with piano. So you might love the piano, but I would say even if you think, oh, I don't like the organ, it's a bit dirty or whatever, then listen again, number 1. But number 2, go and learn the basics of how to play it, because it will serve you well in the long run.
If you could give advice to just young musicians in general who are trying to make their career in music, what could you suggest to them?
I think that it would be, don't accept the maybe with a yes or no. It will save you so much time. Save you time, energy, upset, all completely unnecessary. I think often people that are very creative or artists or musicians, you can spiral into overthinking really easily because of the training as a musician. It's all about overthinking, really. I think actually with that can then translate into opportunities in actual just your life of work, and overthinking every little thing when actually it doesn't need to be, because the answers are not well, there's 5 different ways of interpreting this phrase. Is there a date free or is there not? So don't overthink and get a definite.
Perfect, perfect. Yeah, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining. It was absolutely pleasure to talk to you and to meet you, and it's just fantastic. And I wish you all the best with organ, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of that on your Instagram account.